Welcome to UCBO Fiscal's Travel and Entertainment Card Reconciliation Series. Today we'll be going over employee morale events. Before we get started, there are 4 major types of T&E card expense reports: student events, business technical meetings, employee morale building, and providing on-the-job meals. Each report has its own set of documentation requirements, so please view the individual trainings for more details. Doing a quick dive on employee morale policy. Faculty and staff morale boosting functions like appreciation, recognition, length of service, retirements and farewells, picnics or holiday gatherings must serve a UC San Diego business purpose and can be approved as special entertainment if costs are limited to only the employees in attendance, if costs are within the allowable cost per person limits, and if the costs are permitted under the fund source. If any expenses exceed the per person maximum, justification is required. Retirement and employee separations do have their own stipulations, so please see Confluence for more details. Some other employee morale policy: 1 meal and 2 light refreshments per group per month. The payment method for these events: food vouchers are not allowed for any off-campus events, and gift cards as a way of paying for meals are not allowed either. Some other considerations: alcohol is limited to approved events and only if fund permits. You must consult the fiscal analyst or the fiscal operations manager prior to the event. And under the EVC Academic Affairs, any activities that mirror or promote violence are not allowed. One other thing about employee morale events, contrary to popular belief, retreats are actually considered meetings, not morale events. So retreats are expected that most of the agenda is related to work and only a small portion is reserved for fun activities that's not related to work. Due to these expectations, all retreats will follow the business and technical meeting reconciliation process. If you do have any policy violations, you will need to inquire with IPPS to get a policy exception. These exceptions may or may not be granted depending on the cardholder warning and violation history. Remember, multiple warnings and violations may result in losing card privileges. To avoid any warnings or violations, make sure that your purchases are allowed before actually making the purchase. Employee morale events will always require a little bit more documentation when reconciling because it is considered a special entertainment. We will need a food attendee list. This means we need the name and the emails of each person that attended an event that had food. And if you had any gifts or prizes at this event, we will need the name and email of each person that received a gift or prize at the event. And before moving on to our next section, here is a list of our commonly used acronyms in Concur reports. So we use a lot of acronyms to shorten our Concur report titles, which are often limited to a certain number of characters. Navigating Concur. First, to access Concur, you'll want to go to concur.ucsd.edu and select UC San Diego, and then you'll use your AD login to access Concur. We do have written instructions at this KBA here, and on the next slide, we do have a video. When you first log in, be sure to pay attention to all login warnings. There may be warnings about reconciling or submitting for a period of time, so be sure to pay attention to these. When you first log in, you'll see that there is a navigation pane at the top left. This button right here will toggle this navigation pane. And to go to your expenses, you'll go to this expense list right here. Once you're in this expense list, go to Manage Expenses and you will come to this screen. This is where you can see your transactions and any active reports. There are 3 different types of report statuses. There's an active report this means that the report hasn't been submitted, or it's pending approvals, or it's pending resubmission. Anything that is sent for payment means that it has been fully approved and will post to the ledger. And then anything that says sent back to user has been reviewed by an approver and they were sent back for more information. You can filter your available expenses between card types by clicking on this view toggle right here, and you will click between your cards right here. Another way to view your transactions would be to go to your card transactions under this expense tool right here. You can again toggle your view between different cards. And then you can also kind of filter by the transaction date. So this is a really good way to get a view all transactions per card limited to a specific date. Next, we'll go into creating the reports and reconciling expenses. First, we'll want to create a new report. To do that, you'll be in your Manage Expenses view and click on this blue button at the right. Then you will get a pop-up to create an expense report. This is where you will create the report header. So for example, if I was reconciling for a May 2026 UCBO employee morale event with expenses made on Helen Lee's T&E card, the report type will always be event expenses. And the report name should follow this format right here, the first initial and the last initial, TEC, morale, month, year, and the college acronym. So for this specific case, it will be HLTEC morale, May 26, UCBO. The event start date and the event end date will be the first and last day of the month that it was created. So this report was created in the month of May. So the event start date is May 1st, event end date is May 31st. The event type, this is different from the report type. The event type here is going to be employee morale building. And this detailed business purpose is a business purpose for the whole report. So for the total report, this can be generalized. So for this report right here, I have morale expenses for undergraduate college's business office. Please see expenses for more details because I will be providing more information in each specific transaction. And then at the bottom here, your financial unit will be your financial unit. After you create the report, if you decide or if you realize that you made a mistake, you can go ahead and make edits to it by clicking on this report number right underneath the title. To add transactions to your report, you can, once you're in the report, you can click on Add Expense and then select from available expenses. This select from available expenses will bring up a pop-up of your unreconciled expenses. Select the ones that should be reconciled in this current report and then click Add to Report at the bottom of the pop-up. Remember to only pull in your T&E card expenses. Do not pull in any P card or pending transactions. When you have brought in your available expenses, this is what your view should look like. You should have a red alert right here, or any potential warnings. More info can be found right at the top next to the submit button, submit report button over here. Next column will have the transaction date. Next column, we have the receipt. You can upload your receipts right here. You can also upload your receipts when you're in the actual transaction. Moving on to the next column, we have attributes. This is where you can view your card details. The expense type in the next column, expense types and expenditure types are how we categorize each transaction. And then the last couple of columns over here will be the transaction detail. So we have the vendor detail, the payment type. This should always be a T&E card. And lastly, we have the transaction amount. When we're reconciling your actual expense, you'll click on the expense and it will bring you to this view right here. You'll want to fill out the expenditure type. This is always required. type of meal is always required for food expenses, meal location as well, always required for food expenses. The comments down below right here is this is where you will put in your detailed business purpose. And then it's hidden right here on this side, but it will be to the right of your expense details, a place to put your receipts. So you can go ahead and choose from file or choose from your Concur list of receipts if you've already uploaded them before. And then a full attendee list is always required for food purchases. You can put that in right here. And then the allocation, basically where you are putting in your project and task, that is also always required, and you can put that in right here as well. These are the common expense types and expenditure types. Going back to this slide, it'll be this first part that you input in the actual expense. All of these, the number expense types are related to actual transactions. So if you ever have a purchase, they should be categorized under one of these, under a expense type with a number and a description. If you are putting in a attendee list using a grouped option, I'll go over that later. This is the expense type that you will use to manually input that. If you buy food and supplies on one receipt, you will need to itemize that expense. Basically, itemizing allows you to dedicate specific amounts on one receipt to 2 or more expenditure types. And to do that, you'll click on Add Itemization to begin separating out amounts into its own expenditure type. So you'll click on this Itemization tab, and then it'll bring you to this bar where it has the total amount of the receipt, and it'll begin calculating how much you have actually itemized and how much you have remaining. Then you'll go ahead and click on Add Itemization. As I mentioned, as you itemize, the amounts in the top bar will update to reflect what has been itemized and what is remaining. Any remaining amounts will prompt an error right here on the expense until all amounts are fully itemized. So this right here is an example of an itemization on one receipt. We have a total receipt of $74 and we have itemized $24. So now what's remaining is a $50 amount. After I have added both itemizations, so one for $24 and one for $50, the remaining is now 0 and the error has cleared out. Type of meal is only triggered for food purchases. All events have a maximum meal limit depending on the type of meal, so select the option that best fits the time of your event. The meal location, again, is only triggered for food purchases. These are usually on campus, but off campus is totally fine. Make sure that you're selecting the option that best fits your situation. For business purposes, you want to avoid using words like party. Remember that personal achievements and milestone celebrations are not allowed. Things like birthdays, weddings, graduation, baby shower celebrations are not a valid employee morale expense and will not be reimbursed. This includes all student employees as well, whether that they are employees or leaders. However, retirement celebrations or goodbye gatherings for employees with qualifying years of service is allowed. For guidance on these events, please see our employee recognition conference page. And for any more information on business purposes, please visit Confluence. Here we have a couple of examples on business purposes. We have one for student employees and one for staff morale. Transactions under $75 with the social event expense type will not require receipts because these fall under the programming and events category. However, you are still required to list the items purchased in your business purposes. To be clear, transactions over $75 with a social event expense type will require receipts. However, please note that all gift, prize, and award expense type will require receipts regardless if they were given out during an employee morale event. These expenses benefit specific individuals and thus does not fall under programming and events. Attendees, again, these are only triggered for food and gift award prize expenses. When reconciling these expenses, the attendee does not refer to who attended the event, but who actually benefited from the purchase. So in employee morale reports, attendees will refer to employees who ate food provided at an event. These are usually all event attendees. You can provide the list with a manual entry or a grouped entry, or it will refer to employees who took home a gift, prize, or an award. For this, you will provide the list with a manual entry and concur. To manually add attendees, you'll go to this, in the actual expense, you'll go to this attendee tool right here, and then it'll pop up this attendee module. From here, you'll click on advanced options and then search by faculty staff. And I recommend using either last name and first name or the email. You do not need to fill out all filters to search for a name. I recommend just using the ones that you think will help find the person quickest. And the second way to provide an attendee list is to provide a grouped list. To create a group, you will again go into the attendee module, and then in the search criteria, you will change it to group of attendees 100 or less, and then you'll click on create a new attendee over here. When you create a new attendee, you will put in the event name and the date. After you have made that in the expense, you will now create a manual expense with this list of meal attendees, as I mentioned earlier. You will create the manual expense and upload the PDF of the attendee list you have. For the date, you'll put in the date of the event. The comment will be the event name and the transactions the list pertains to, and then you will upload your attendee list here. To allocate expenses to a specific COA, you will want to go into the expense and click allocate. This will bring up a allocation pop-up, and so you'll click on add. Clicking the add button will create a new pop-up where you can actually manually input the COAs you want to use. Financial unit should auto-populate from the report header. You should only change this if you are charging a different department COA for this expense. The approver will always be the fiscal manager for professional employees and the fiscal analyst for RAHA expenses. Please note that these are the approvers for the college's COAs. If you are using a COA that's not part of the colleges, they will have a different approver. Next, if you scroll down, you'll see a project, task, and fund. These three are always required. You'll notice that on Concur, the fund is not required if you're using a project and task. However, please note that UCBO requires the fund number. It allows approvers to quickly identify the COA being used and determine if expenses are being charged to the appropriate COAs. If you're going to split your allocations, aka splitting expenses between two or more COAs, you'll just add another COA and then toggle between the percent and amount and distribute the expenses accordingly. After you're done, ensure that 100% of the expense has been allocated. After you have finished allocating and inputting your attendees and filling out the information needed to reconcile, Your expense report should be complete. This is an example of a completed expense report. There are no errors here. There are no errors here or next to the submit report button over here. Orange warnings are fine as long as you've confirmed that it can be disregarded. And now if we come over to this attributes column, you'll see this group of people right here. This indicates that attendees have been added to the expense. This pie slice diagram indicates that the expense has been allocated. And now your expenses are completed. Before submitting your report, you'll want to ensure that the report is routing to the correct approvals. To do that, you'll go to Report Details under the report header, go to Report Timeline, and then you will see this approval slide right here. So the financial unit will auto route to the fin unit approver selected during the expense allocation stages. The department head should always be the UCBO department head. And then the special entertainment approver will always be your college provost, unless the provost is the purchaser. After you have edited your approvals, your report is now ready to submit. Finally, we'll move on to key considerations. The deadlines to submit your reports are the 25th of each month. This is in line with the procurement card reports. Reports that are sent back for edits and more information should be resubmitted within 5 business days. If the 25th or the resubmission date lands on a weekend or a holiday, it is due the business day prior. And some more context on approvals. All employee morale reports go through an extra level of approval, regardless of the amount of the expense on the report. The report approval queue must be checked before submission to ensure it routes to the correct approvers. So this is the approval queue for all employee morale reports. It'll first go through the supervisor. Usually this is the fiscal coordinator who ensures that the report has been completed with no glaring errors. Next, it'll go to the financial unit. The fiscal manager will approve the use of COAs within context of its budget and confirms if expenses are allowed within policy. Then it'll go to the department head. The UCBO department head gives a second approval of COA within the context of its budget. And then it'll move on to the special entertainment. The college provost will give final authorization of the morale event. Again, this is triggered for all employee morale reports. College provost reports will require a different special entertainment approver. Be sure to reach out to UCBO for more information in this case. Finally, it'll move on to the IPPS approval. This is the final level of policy review and approval before the report is processed on the ledger. Remember that each approver may return the report to you for more information. To avoid this, be sure to submit your expenses with as much information and context you can provide. If your report is sent back for more information, it'll have the sent back to user report status. There are 2 ways to see why a report was sent back. Method 1 will be for comments that appear at the top of any open report. So if you go into a report, it'll just be at the top right here. It can have this look or this look right here. And report 2 will be through the report timeline. So going back to the report timeline where we put in the approval queue, click on this report timeline, and to the right on the pop-up screen, it'll have a report summary. And then it'll have basically the whole detailed historical view of how this report came to be. And within it, it'll have the report comments with more with questions or requests for more information. This is good for closed reports and reports that have already been submitted for approvals. And lastly, A report can be sent back automatically from the Concur system, and this is usually due to COA or POETAF errors. So basically, after a request or an expense report is submitted, the chart string information or COA information is validated against the data in Oracle through a process called external validation. Through this process, the system verifies that the COA is filled out completely with UCSD values, not UCOP values, and also ensures that the chart string is an acceptable chart string. So for example, some funds and some functions can't be used in the same chart string. If there's an error with the chart string, Concur will send the request or the expense report back to the user with an error message. Usually a COA failed validation error means that the issue is located within the COA information, most notably the fund, financial unit, approver, function, program, location, or project. And a POETAF failed validation error means that the issue is located within the POETAF information, most notably the project, expenditure type, task, and funding source. If the error message contains OP anywhere, for example, this POETAF failed validation, and then we have OP right in the middle of this chart string. This means that a UCOP chart string value was used because we currently share our usage of Concur with the Office of the President. So if you ever encounter any of these, please refer to this KBA linked here for more information on how to resolve. Before closing out, I wanted to share some tips and tricks. If you have any COAs that you frequently use, consider saving them as a favorite to skip manual entry. To do so, you'll want to, after you have manually inputted the COA, you'll click on this checkbox right here, select it, and then click Save as Favorite. I recommend saving the COA with the fund number in the chart string. And then I also recommend saving the COA with the fin unit approver's name in the title. After you have saved the COA favorite, you can click on this tab, favorite allocations, and it will appear in the list right here. Another tip, if you frequently use the same group of people, consider creating an attendee group. To do so, you'll manually add in your attendees, select them all, and then click on Create Group. Then you'll name the group. And then after creating the group, it can be found under attendee groups under advanced options. So you go to advanced options and then it'll pull up this screen and you'll click on attendee groups and then you can click on the group that you saved. And then finally, if you have multiple expenses that need to be allocated to the same COA, consider allocating them all at once. To do so, after you have put in all of the business purposes, you verified all the tax information, everything like that, you'll go to the report view where you have the list of expenses, and you'll click on the expenses that you want, and then you'll click on allocate, and this will bring up the same allocation tool in the individual expense view. And one more, if you have multiple expenses that have the same expenditure type and mostly the same business purpose, you can also edit multiple expenses at once. So you'll go ahead and click on the expenses that you want and click on edit. It should bring up this edit expense pop-up where you can put in the expenditure type and you can also put in a comment. Please note that you will still need to go into each expense and ensure all the information regarding the expenditure type, the tax, and the business purpose is correct. And finally, before closing out today, I just wanted to share the resources that we have available. There are a lot of office hour sessions throughout the week. Other resources include our YouTube, our Confluence, our infographics, and then also the KBAs that Central Campus develops. And we also have the UC Learning T&E Card e-course and the T&E Card instructor-led trainings. So please be sure to refer to these resources. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out.